Shanice Johnson worked at Riverside Cafe in Mountain View, California. She was 28 years old and had been a waitress there for almost 4 years. The cafe was not fancy, but it was clean and popular with local workers. Shanice had 2 children, Marcus, who was 7, and Zoe, who was 5. Being a single mother was hard, but Shanice worked very hard to give her children a good life. She woke up at 5 a.m. every day to get her children ready for school before her sister came to take them. Then she would catch the bus to start her morning shift at the cafe. Life was not easy for Shanice. She paid rent for a small 2-bedroom apartment, and after bills, there was little money left, but she never complained. She was taking online classes at night to learn computer programming. Shanice had always been good with computers, and she dreamed of getting a better job in tech one day. "One day I will work at a company like Google," she often told her children when they passed the big Google buildings on the bus. "And then we will have a house with a yard for you to play in." That Tuesday seemed like any other day at Riverside Cafe. The morning was busy with people getting coffee before work. Then came the lunch rush when the cafe filled with hungry customers. Shanice moved quickly between tables, taking orders, bringing food, and making sure everyone was happy. Around 1:30 p.m., when things were getting quieter, the bell above the door rang as someone new walked in. Shanice was wiping down a table when Maria, the hostess, came over to her. "Shanice, I just seated someone in your section," Maria whispered, looking excited. "Table 7. "Okay, I'll be right there," Shanice replied, putting away her cloth. "Do you know who that is?" Maria asked, her eyes wide. Shanice had glanced over at table 7. A man in a simple button-up shirt sat alone, looking at his phone. He had dark skin, glasses, and seemed ordinary enough. "Should I know him?" Shanice asked. "That's Sundar Pichai," Maria said, "the CEO of Google." Shanice felt her heart beat faster. She had seen his picture online in articles about Google. What was he doing here in their simple cafe? Taking a deep breath, Shanice walked over to table 7 with her notepad ready. She would treat him like any other customer, she decided. That was her job. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Riverside Cafe. Can I get you something to drink?" she asked with her usual friendly smile. Sundar Pichai looked up from his phone and smiled back. "Just water, please. And I'm ready to order if that's okay." His voice was soft, and he had an accent. He seemed much more normal than Shanice expected for someone so important. "Of course," Shanice said, pen ready. "What would you like today?" "I'll have the vegetable sandwich and a side salad," he said. Shanice wrote down his order. "I'll bring that right out for you." As she walked to the kitchen to place his order, she couldn't help wondering why someone like Sundar Pichai would come to their small cafe when he could eat anywhere he wanted. Little did she know that this ordinary lunch service would soon change her life forever. Shanice quickly brought the water to Sundar Pichai's table. She noticed he was looking around the cafe with interest. The walls had photos of local places and some artwork from a nearby school. Nothing special, but it gave the cafe a warm feeling. "Your food will be ready soon," Shanice told him with a smile. "Thank you," he replied. Then he surprised her by asking, "Have you worked here long?" Shanice was not used to customers asking about her. Most people were busy with their phones or talking with friends. "Almost 4 years now," she answered. "You must like it here," he said. "It's a good place. The owners are kind, and the customers are nice," Shanice said. She didn't mention how tired she was sometimes or how her feet hurt after a long day. That wasn't important. In the kitchen, Sam, the cook, was excited when Shanice told him who was at table 7. "Sundar Pichai? For real?" Sam asked as he prepared the sandwich. "My cousin works at Google. He says Pichai is a good boss." "He seems nice," Shanice said. "Very normal." When the food was ready, Shanice carried it carefully to table 7. The vegetable sandwich looked fresh with colorful peppers, cucumber, and avocado. "Here you are, sir. Vegetable sandwich and side salad," she said, placing the plate in front of him. "This looks wonderful, thank you," Pichai said. Shanice noticed he had a small notebook next to him. There were some words written, but she couldn't read them. She didn't want to be nosy. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked. "No, this is perfect. But I'm curious," he said, looking at her name tag. "Shanice, what do you like most about working here?" The question surprised her again. Shanice thought for a moment. I like meeting different people, she said honestly. Everyone has a story. Pichai nodded, seeming truly interested. That's a good way to see the world. As Shanice went to check on her other tables, she wondered why the CEO of Google was asking her questions. Maybe he was just being friendly. The cafe got busy again with the late lunch crowd. Janice had to serve 5 other tables. She checked on Pichai once to make sure everything was good, and he gave her a thumbs up. Maria came over while Shanice was filling salt shakers. I saw you talking to him, Maria whispered. What did he say? Just normal things. Shanice replied, he's very polite. My brother says Google pays their workers very well, Maria said. Even the cleaning staff gets good benefits. Shanice just nodded. She had looked at Google jobs online many times, but they all needed college degrees or skills she didn't have yet. That's why she was taking her online classes. Later, Shanice saw that Pichai had finished his meal. She went over to clear his plate. Was everything good? She asked. Excellent, he said. This place is a hidden gem. Would you like dessert? Our apple pie is fresh today, Shanice offered. Pichai shook his head. Just the check, please. I have a meeting to get back to. When Shanice brought the check, she noticed Pichai looking at her more carefully. Do you like working with computers, Shanice? He asked suddenly. Shanice was surprised by the question. How did he know? Yes, she said. I'm actually taking online classes in programming at night. Pichai's eyes lit up with interest. Really? What languages are you learning? Python right now, she answered. I find it interesting. Pichai nodded with approval. Python is very useful. Keep learning. As he took out his wallet to pay, Shanice wondered if this strange conversation would lead anywhere. She had no idea that the next few minutes would change everything. So you're learning Python? Sundar Pichai asked as he handed Shanice his credit card. His eyes showed real interest, not just polite conversation. Yes, Shanice replied. I study when my kids are asleep. It's hard, but I enjoy it. You have children? He asked. Shanice nodded. 2. Marcus is 7 and Zoe is 5. She didn't normally share personal information with customers, but something about Pichai made her feel comfortable. That's impressive, he said. Working full-time, raising children, and studying programming. Shanice smiled. We do what we have to do, right? While she went to process his payment, Shanice thought about their conversation. It felt strange to talk about her dreams with someone who had achieved so much. She wondered if her small efforts seemed silly to him. At the register, Maria nudged her. What are you two talking about? He seems really interested. Just about my computer classes, Shanice said, running the credit card. Nothing important. Nothing important? Shanice, that's the CEO of Google asking about your computer skills. Shanice hadn't thought of it that way. Her hands trembled slightly as she printed the receipt. When she returned to the table, Pichai was writing something on a napkin. He quickly folded it and put it aside when she approached. Here's your receipt, sir, she said, placing it on the table with his card. Thank you. He signed the receipt and handed it back. I admire what you're doing, Shanice. Learning new skills while taking care of your family isn't easy. Thank you, she said, feeling a warmth in her chest at his words. No one had told her they admired her in a long time. Pichai stood up and put on his jacket. I started from simple beginnings too. My family didn't have much when I was growing up in India. Really? Shanice asked. It was hard to imagine this powerful man ever struggling. Yes, I remember our first telephone. It took 4 years to get it. He smiled at the memory. But I worked hard in school, and each step opened new doors. Shanice listened, fascinated. This man ran one of the biggest companies in the world, yet he was standing here sharing his story with her. The tech world needs more people with different backgrounds and experiences, he continued. That's how we get new ideas and better products. Shanice nodded, not sure what to say. As he prepared to leave, Pichai reached for the folded napkin. He held it in his hand for a moment, seeming to make a decision. Then he handed it to Shanice. I wrote something for you, he said. But don't open it until I leave, okay? Okay, Shanice promised, taking the napkin. It felt light in her hand, but somehow important. It was nice meeting you, Shanice. Keep learning. Thank you for coming, she replied. Have a good day. Pichai smiled one last time and walked toward the door. A little bell rang as he left. Other customers needed her attention, so Shanice put the napkin in her apron pocket. Whatever was written, there would have to wait. For the next hour, Shanice cleared tables, took orders, and refilled coffee cups. But her mind kept returning to the folded napkin in her pocket. What could the Google CEO have written to her? A website to visit? Career advice? What did he give you? Maria asked when they met by the coffee machine. Just a note, Shanice said. I haven't read it yet. Well, hurry up and read it, Maria urged. I will, during my break, Shanice promised. As the afternoon went on, Shanice felt the napkin in her pocket like it was getting heavier. Whatever Sundar Pichai had written for her, she knew it must be important. But she had no idea just how much it would change her life. At 3:30 p.m., Shanice finally got her break. The lunch rush was over, and the cafe was quiet. She signed her break sheet and walked to the small back room where workers could rest. There was a worn couch, a small table, and a refrigerator for staff food. Shanice sat down and took a deep breath. Her feet hurt from standing all day, but she couldn't rest long. She had only 15 minutes before she needed to return to work. Maria came into the break room just as Shanice was taking out the folded napkin from her pocket. Finally, Maria said, sitting next to her, I've been dying to know what you wrote. Read it. Shanice felt nervous. What if it was just a normal thank you note? Maybe she and Maria were making too much of this. Still, her hands shook slightly as she unfolded the napkin. The first thing she saw made her gasp. There was a phone number and email address at the top with the name Sundar Pichai, Google CEO, written neatly. Is that his personal contact? Maria asked, leaning closer. Shanice nodded, unable to speak. Below the contact information was a handwritten message. Shanice, I was impressed by your determination to learn programming while working full-time and raising 2 children. Google has a special program for people with unusual backgrounds who want to enter tech. Call this number and mention my name. They will give you details about our next step program. It includes training, mentorship, and possible job placement. You have the drive to succeed. Sometimes people just need a door open for them. Sundar. Shanice read the note 3 times. Her heart was beating fast. Oh my God, Maria whispered. Shanice, this is big. But there was more. At the bottom of the napkin was something that made Shanice's eyes go wide. Pichai had written, P.S. I've added a small gift to help with your studies. Check your tip. Shanice suddenly remembered that she hadn't yet collected her tip from table 7. She had been so busy that she forgot to check the receipt. The receipt, she said, jumping up. It's still at the table. She rushed out of the break room with Maria following close behind. Table 7 had already been cleared, but the receipt was in the small folder where customers left their payment. Shanice picked up the folder with shaking hands. She opened it and looked at the receipt. Then she grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. On the tip line, Sundar Pichai had written $2,000. $2,000? Maria gasped, looking over Shanice's shoulder. For a $15 sandwich? Shanice couldn't speak. She just stared at the number. This was more than she made in a month. This could pay for her computer classes for a whole year. This could get Marcus the new glasses he needed and Zoe the proper winter coat she had been asking for. And he's offering you a program at Google, Maria added, pointing to the napkin still clutched in Shanice's other hand. This is life-changing, Shanice. Tears started to form in Shanice's eyes. She tried to hold them back, but they began to fall down her cheeks. One tear fell onto the receipt, making a small wet spot next to the enormous tip. Are you okay? Maria asked, putting her arm around Shanice's shoulders. Shanice nodded, wiping her eyes. I just can't believe it. Why would he do this for me? He doesn't even know me. He saw something in you, Maria said. Something special. Sam came out from the kitchen and saw Shanice crying. What's wrong? He asked with concern. Shanice couldn't explain. She just handed him the receipt. Holy! Sam's eyes went wide. Is this real? Did he really leave this? Shanice nodded, still crying but now with a smile breaking through her tears. What are you going to do? Maria asked. Shanice looked at the napkin with Pichai's contact information and the life-changing opportunity it represented. I'm going to call that number, she said with determination. as soon as my shift ends. The rest of Shanice's shift passed in a blur. She moved between tables, took orders, and smiled at customers, but her mind was elsewhere. The napkin felt like it was burning in her pocket, and she kept touching it to make sure it was still there. At 6 p.m., Shanice's shift finally ended. She changed out of her work clothes in the employee bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. "This is really happening," she whispered to her reflection. Her hands were still shaking. Outside the cafe, Shanice sat on a bench. She needed a quiet moment before calling the number. The evening was cool, with people walking home from work or heading to dinner. No one noticed the waitress sitting alone, holding a wrinkled napkin with life-changing words written on it. Taking a deep breath, Shanice dialed the number on her phone. Her heart pounded as she listened to it ring. "Google, Human Resources, this is Jennifer speaking," a friendly voice answered. "Hello," Shanice said nervously. "My name is Shanice Johnson. I was told to call this number by Sundar Pichai." There was a pause on the line. "Mr. Pichai gave you this number directly?" Jennifer asked, sounding surprised. "Yes, he came to the cafe where I work today. He wrote this number on a napkin and told me to call about the Next Step program." "Just one moment, please," Jennifer said. While Shanice waited, she wondered if this was all some mistake. Maybe the number was wrong. Maybe there was no program. Maybe. "Ms. Johnson?" Jennifer's voice returned. "I've confirmed with Mr. Pichai's office. He did indeed recommend you for our Next Step program. This is quite extraordinary." Relief flooded through Shanice. "So it's real." "Very real," Jennifer assured her. The Next Step program is designed for people with non-traditional backgrounds who show exceptional potential. Mr. Pichai seldom makes personal recommendations. "He mentioned something about training?" Shanice asked. "Yes. It's a 6-month paid training program. You would learn programming skills, work with mentors, and potentially have a job waiting at the end if you do well." Shanice closed her eyes. Paid training. She wouldn't have to choose between earning money and learning new skills. "When would it start?" she asked. "We have a new group beginning in 3 weeks. I can email you the application forms, but with Mr. Pichai's recommendation, your place is essentially secured." 3 weeks. Shanice's mind raced. She would need to find someone to cover her shifts. She would need childcare for Marcus and Zoe. "Is there anything else I should know?" Shanice asked. "The program includes a weekly stipend of $1,200, Jennifer said. Shanice nearly dropped her phone. That was almost 3 times what she made at the cafe. "Also, there's childcare available at our campus if you need it," Jennifer added. "Mr. Pichai mentioned you have children." Tears began to form in Shanice's eyes again. He had thought of everything. "Thank you," she managed to say. I don't know what to say." "We'll be in touch tomorrow with all the details," Jennifer said warmly. "Welcome to Google's Next Step program, Ms. Johnson." After hanging up, Shanice sat on the bench for a long time. The sun was setting, painting the sky pink and orange. Cars passed by, people walked past. The world continued as normal, but Shanice's world had just changed completely. She thought of her children at her sister's house, waiting for her to pick them up. She couldn't wait to tell them the news. No more double shifts. No more studying late into the night after a full day of work. A real chance at a career in technology. All because a famous CEO had noticed her and decided to help. Shanice stood up and wiped her eyes. She needed to get home to her children. Tomorrow would be the beginning of their new life. As she walked to the bus stop, she held the napkin tightly in her hand. Some gifts were too precious to let go. Shanice entered her sister Tamika's apartment just after 7 p.m. The sound of children laughing greeted her. Marcus and Zoe were playing a board game on the living room floor while Tamika cooked dinner in the small kitchen. "Mommy." Zoe jumped up and ran to Shanice, wrapping her arms around her mother's legs. Marcus looked up from the game. "Hi, Mom. You're early today." Usually, Shanice worked until 8 p.m. on Tuesdays. The children were used to her late hours. "Something happened at work," Shanice said, hugging Zoe tightly. "Something big." Tamika came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What's going on? You okay? You look like you've been crying." Shanice nodded. "I'm more than okay. I just can't believe it's real." She guided the children back to the living room and sat down on the worn couch. Tamika sat beside her, looking concerned. Today at the cafe, Shanice began, Sundar Pichai came in for lunch. Who's that? Marcus asked. He's the boss of Google, Shanice explained. One of the most important tech companies in the world. Like where our computer comes from, Zoe asked. Sort of, Shanice smiled. Anyway, he came to the cafe, and we talked a little bit about my programming classes. And? Tamika prompted when Shanice paused. Shanice took out the napkin from her purse and carefully unfolded it. He gave me this note, and he left me a $2,000 tip. Tamika's eyes widened. $2,000? Are you serious? That's a lot of money, Marcus said, clearly impressed though not fully understanding how much. Can we buy a pony? Zoe asked immediately. Shanice laughed, the joy of the moment finally breaking through her shock. No pony, baby, but I'll get you that winter coat you wanted. And Marcus will get your new glasses. But that's not all, she continued, looking at her sister. You recommended me for a special program at Google. I just got off the phone with them. I start in 3 weeks. It's paid training, Tamika. More than I make at the cafe. Tamika's mouth fell open. Are you for real? A job at Google? Training first, Shanice clarified. But if I do well, yes, a real job at Google. Mommy's going to work with computers. Marcus asked, his eyes lighting up. Yes, baby, I'm going to work with computers, Shanice confirmed. Zoe climbed onto her mother's lap. Does this mean you won't be tired all the time? The innocent question brought fresh tears to Shanice's eyes. Her children had noticed how exhausted she always was, working long hours at the cafe and studying late into the night. I hope so, sweetie, she said, stroking Zoe's hair. Things are going to be different now. Tamika hugged her sister tightly. I always knew you could do it, Shanice. You've worked so hard. I still can't believe it, Shanice said. Why would he do this for me? There must be thousands of people who want jobs at Google. He saw something in you, Tamika said firmly. Something special, the same thing I've always seen. That night, after dinner at Tamika's, Shanice took her children home to their small apartment. As she tucked them into bed, she felt a new sense of hope that had been missing for a long time. Mommy, Marcus said as she kissed him goodnight, are we going to be rich now? Shanice smiled. Not rich, baby, but things will be better. I promise. After the children were asleep, Shanice sat at her small desk where she usually studied her programming lessons. She looked at the old second-hand computer Tamika had given her last year for Christmas. She had learned so much on this machine. Now, she would learn even more. Now, she had a real chance at the future she had always dreamed of. The napkin with Sundar Pichai's note lay on the desk beside her keyboard. Shanice touched it gently, still hardly believing that her life had changed so much in a single day. Tomorrow, she would need to tell her boss at the cafe that she was leaving. A new chapter was beginning. The next morning, Shanice woke up before her alarm. For the first time in years, she felt truly excited to start her day. She made breakfast for Marcus and Zoe, humming as she flipped pancakes on the stove. You're happy today, Mommy, Zoe observed, watching her mother with curious eyes. I am happy, Shanice agreed. Very happy. After dropping the children at school, Shanice headed to Riverside Cafe. She needed to talk to Bob, the owner, about leaving. The thought made her nervous. Bob had been good to her over the years, letting her adjust her schedule when the children were sick and always making sure she got the better tips sections. The cafe was quiet when she arrived, still an hour before her shift started. Bob was in his small office doing paperwork. Shanice? He looked up, surprised to see her early. Everything okay? Yes, she said, sitting down across from him. But I need to talk to you about something important. She told him about Sundar Pichai's visit, the note, and the opportunity at Google. Bob listened with wide eyes, occasionally shaking his head in amazement. That's incredible, he said when she finished. Absolutely incredible. I know it's only 2 weeks' notice instead of the usual 3. Shanice began. Bob waved his hand. Don't worry about that. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm happy for you, Shanice. You deserve this. Relief washed over her. Thank you, Bob, for everything. For being so flexible with my schedule all these years. You've been one of my best employees, Bob said sincerely. I'll miss you, but this is what you've been working toward, right? All those late nights studying. Janice had nodded, feeling emotional again. I never thought it would happen like this. It seems like a dream. Later that day, Maria and the other staff threw an impromptu celebration during the afternoon lull. Sam made a special cake, and they all signed a card. Don't forget us when you're a big shot at Google, Sam joked, but his eyes were kind. Never. Shanice promised. You're my family. The next 3 weeks passed quickly. Shanice received emails from Google's HR department with forms to fill out and information about the training program. She used part of the tip money to buy a new laptop for her work and classes. Marcus got his new glasses, and Zoe got her winter coat, along with new shoes for both children. Tamika agreed to watch the children during the day until Shanice got settled at Google and could arrange the on-site childcare. Everything was falling into place. On her last day at Riverside Cafe, many regular customers came to say goodbye. Word had spread about her amazing opportunity. We'll miss your smile, said Mr. Peterson, an elderly man who came every day for coffee and toast. But we're so proud of you, added Mrs. Chen, who ran the dry cleaners next door. By the end of her shift, Janice had received countless hugs and well wishes. It felt like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. That evening, she sat with Marcus and Zoe at their small kitchen table. She had bought a small cake to celebrate. Next week, Mommy starts her new job, she told the children. Things will be different, but better. I won't be so tired all the time. Will you still help me with my homework? Marcus asked. Of course, Shanice assured him. I'll have more time for that now. And story time? Zoe wanted to know. Definitely story time, Shanice promised, hugging her daughter. As they ate their cake, Shanice thought about how much had changed since that Tuesday when Sundar Pichai walked into the cafe. One small moment had altered the course of their lives. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Shanice carefully placed the napkin with Pichai's note in a clear plastic sleeve to protect it. Someday, she would frame it properly. It was more than just a note now. It was the beginning of their new life. Monday morning would be her first day at Google. She was nervous but ready. For the first time in a long time, Shanice fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of the possibilities that lay ahead. 6 months later, Shanice stood in front of the mirror in her new apartment, adjusting her blue blouse. Today was special, her last day of the Google Next Step program and her first day as a full employee at Google. Mom, hurry up. We're going to be late. Marcus called from the living room. At 8 years old, he took his role as the man of the house very seriously. Coming. Shanice called back, taking one last look at herself. She hardly recognized the confident woman in the mirror compared to the tired waitress she had been half a year ago. Their new apartment was nothing fancy, but it was bigger and in a better neighborhood. The children each had their own room, and there was a small office space where Shanice could work when needed. The rent was higher, but with her new Google salary, they could afford it comfortably. In the kitchen, Zoe was finishing her cereal while Marcus packed his lunchbox. Ready for your big day, Mommy? Zoe asked, milk dripping down her chin. Shanice wiped Zoe's face with a napkin. Yes, baby, very ready. The drive to Google's campus took only 15 minutes in their used car, another purchase Shanice had made with her training stipend. She dropped the children at the Google Child Care Center, which they loved because it had the best toys and computers. As she walked toward her building, Shanice spotted a familiar face near the entrance. Sundar Pichai was talking with some executives, all in business casual clothes. Shanice hesitated. She had never seen him again after that day at the cafe. She had written him a thank you email, and he had sent a kind reply, but their paths had not crossed on the large Google campus. Taking a deep breath, she approached the group. Excuse me, Mr. Pichai? She said politely. He turned, looking momentarily confused before recognition dawned on his face. Shanice, how wonderful to see you. The executives looked curious as Pichai excused himself to talk with her. Today is my last day of the Next Step program, Shanice told him. I wanted to thank you again. You changed my life. Pichai smiled warmly. I only opened a door. You walked through it yourself. How has the program been? Amazing, Shanice said honestly. I've learned so much. They're placing me on the Android development team starting today. Excellent. That's a great team, Pichai said. And your children? Are they adjusting well? Shanice was touched that he remembered her children. They love it. Marcus is in a coding club for kids, and Zoe thinks the childcare center is better than Disneyland. They both laughed, and for a moment, Shanice forgot she was talking to one of the most powerful CEOs in the world. I kept the napkin, she admitted. I framed it. Pichai nodded, looking pleased. Sometimes the smallest gestures can have the biggest impact. Why did you do it? Shanice finally asked the question that had been on her mind for months. Why me? Pichai thought for a moment before answering. I saw someone with determination and talent who just needed a chance. Google needs people like you, people who overcome obstacles and see things from different perspectives. One of the executives called Pichai's name, indicating they needed to leave. I have to go, he said, but I'm glad our paths crossed again. Thank you, Shanice said once more, for everything. No thanks needed, Pichai replied. Just remember to hold the door open for someone else someday. As Shanice watched him walk away, she felt a sense of peace. 6 months ago, she had been crying in the break room of a cafe, overwhelmed by an unexpected act of kindness. Today, she was standing on Google's campus as an employee, with a future brighter than she had ever imagined. That evening, when she picked up Marcus and Zoe from childcare, they walked together to their car under the California sunset. Did you have a good first day as a real Googler, Mommy? Marcus asked. Shanice smiled, looking at her children's happy faces. The best day, she said. And it's just the beginning. On her desk at home, the framed napkin sat next to a new photo of her children on the Google campus. One small moment had changed everything, and someday, Shanice promised herself she would do the same for someone else.